Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Another point he's mentioned here is a very beautiful point, but there's two muqaddimat, two primary rules we need to have a look at before here. Number one is there's certain rules which are grammatical rules which is jaiz. Like you have two options. So for example, you can have ayatun bayyinat or ayatun bayyina. When you have the man'ut or the mubtada or the you can have the nat or the khabar or the hal in one of two ways. When the mubtada is غير عاقل, جمع غير عاقل, you can have the mubtada, the man'ut, or the dhul hal. You can then have the hal either of two ways. As a mufrad, أيام معدودات, أيام معدودة as a mufrad, or you can bring it as a jama, أيام معدودات, آيات بينات, jama, or آيات بينة, both. And Nahu perspective is كلاهما جائز. But obviously Nahwa, that's what they say, and that's it, finished. Balagha is, well, why? What's the fa'ida? That's one thing. The fa'ida for this is that there are two types of plural, Jam'ul Qilla and Jam'ul Kathra. Jam'ul Qilla, by definition, is between 3 to 10, and Kathra is 10 and more. But obviously it's relative. You can have, it doesn't necessarily have to be 3 to 10. You can have a scenario where it's less, and you have both plurals. One is used for a smaller number, and the Kathra is used for a larger number, even though it may not necessarily be the 10 defining factor. So you have two things. One is you have two types of plurals. Jam'ul Qilla, where it refers to 3 to 10 or a smaller number, and Kathra is referring to more. Another rule is when you have a nat, or you have a khabar, or you have a hal, and the thing you're talking about is غير عاقل, جمع غير عاقل. You have two choices. You can bring it as a mufrad, bayyana, or ma'duda, or you can bring it plural, bayyinat or ma'dudat. Two possibilities. Now, along with this is also another masala is in a fa'il. Sometimes in a fa'il, you have an option of tadhkir or ta'nith. For example, if the fa'il is jama mukassar, for example, the fa'il is jama mukassar. So now you have a possibility here. The grammarians will say, well, you can say ja'a rijal or ja'at rijal. Both are permissible because rijal is jama mukassar. Both are permissible. But in balagha, you ask the question, what's the fa'ida? So the same rule. So what happened here now is the rule here in this fa'il rule masala, and also in the na and the khabar masala is when we're talking about a higher number, a larger number, is kathra. So the general rule is we will use the single mu'annath. Or when it is a larger number, when it's a smaller number, use the plurals, opposites. Because the Arabs do that. When you're talking about smaller numbers, they have a plural. For example, thalathatu ayyamin. So for 3, they use 3 days. The ayyam is plural. Whereas ishuna yawman. So when it comes to a higher number, use the singular. They use opposite. They call chiastic concord. They use that as a structure that they use. For smaller numbers, they use a plural, tamiz, and larger numbers, a singular tamiz. Look at all of these rules together. Let's take a few examples. So if we have, for example, Allah says, وَقَالَ نِسْوَةٌ فِي الْمَدِينَةِ. So now, niswa, it's jama mukassar. So we have possibility, we could use both قَالَت or قَالَ نِسْوَةٌ. Both are permissible from a grammatical perspective. But now we know here that the women in the story of Yusuf, they were small in number. They weren't a large, like the whole city is speaking. A few women, a small group of friends. So Allah says, قَالَ نِسْوَةٌ. Because the mudhakkar is going to show a smaller number. Whereas a larger number, use a feminine. So Allah says, وَقَالَتِ الْأَعْرَابُ آمَنَّا. Here the A'rab and the villagers who were speaking to the Prophet ﷺ, they're large in number. A lot of people said this. So Allah doesn't say قَالَ الْأَعْرَابُ. He said قَالَتِ الْأَعْرَابُ. Similarly, in when Allah uses the word أَيَّامًا مَعْدُودَات. أَيَّامًا مَعْدُودَات. So أَيَّامًا مَعْدُودَات is a plural. So therefore it refers to a smaller number of days. When it's أَيَّامًا مَعْدُودَةً, if a singular, it's a larger number of days. Similarly, example in Ashhur al-Hajj, Allah says, in the iddat al-shuhuri. So shuhuri jamul kathra. So the pronoun that refers to that is what? Because it's kathra, is more than 10. So the zamir minha. The ha zamir is what? Singular. So that means that singular zamir is referring to a larger number, 10 or more. Which is referring to 12 months of the year. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is referring to in Ashhur al-Hurum. Allah says, فَلَا تَظْلِمُوا فِيهِنَّ. The zamir is plural. Because why? Fihinna is referring to a small 4 months. So now because it's a smaller number, you use a jama' zamir. That's the underlying principle in here. So back to the preliminary. What preliminaries are? When you have a fa'il and you have jama' mukassar, you can bring mudhakkar mu'annas. The mu'annas will denote that the fa'il is more in number. The mudhakkar will denote as lesser in number. Similarly, if you have a nat, or you have a dhamir referring back to the ghair aqil, you have a choice. If you use a plural nat, a plural dhamir, then this refers to a number is smaller. If you use a mufrad mu'annas dhamir, ha, min ha, or use a mufrad nat or mufrad khabar, it refers to a larger number. So those are all different points we've seen. Then also another example he gives. Another example we have is that another example is also ismul jins al ismul jins. Whenever ismul jins, something referring to a species or a type, in there as well you're allowed to use both mudhakkar and muannas. For example, you have kadhabat qablahum qawm nuhin. So kadhabat, because qawm is the ismul jins, referring to a group of people. So you say kadhaba or kadhabat. So you have a possibility because it's now a larger number. That's why you say kadhabat. Now, in one verse, regarding another noun we have here, is the word shajar. So shajarun is referring to jins, type, species. If you're referring to one tree, say shajaratun, one tree, shajarat, many trees. And shajara ajjar, you're talking about generally, collectively, not by one particular ma'hud known. You're talking about generally, trees, generally, shajarun. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the word shajarun, he gives 3 examples here. Allah says, هو الذي أنزل من السماء ماء لكم منه شراب ومنه شجر فيه تسيمون. So grammatically, you can say here, شجر فيه or شجر فيها. في غير القرآن, you can say شجر فيها. So again, شجر فيه تسيمون. مذكر comes. In other words, Allah says, الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون. So شجر, the zamir is referring to شجر مفردا because it's majin, so you can say minhu or minha, because it's mudhakkar or muannas. But when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he speaks about ashabun nar, he says ثم إنكم أيها الضالون ثم إنكم أيها الضالون المكذبون لآكلون من شجر من زقوم فمالئون منها البطون. Minha. So here's minha. So it's jais, both of them are jais from grammatical perspective, but why Allah chosen over the other? So when it's kathra, use minha. Qilla, use minhu. And I said, qilla doesn't have to be necessarily the 3 to 10 exactly, but it can be relative. So when Allah is speaking about shajar, what is more? The dunya is mahdud, and the hereafter is ghayr mahdud. Jahannam is Jannah, abundant, much larger. So Allah says it. So that when Allah speaks about the trees of the dunya, is shajarun minhu, minhu tuqidu. Allah speaks about the trees of Jannah, trees of the dunya. He uses the minhu dhamir to show the qilla relatively to the hereafter. And regarding Jahannam, wallahu alam, Allah says, فَمَالِئُونَ مِنْهَا الْبُطُونَ. Allah subhanallah.